Chapter 4, Part 2, The Qur'an and Society. The Qur'an explains that God's revelation has been given to all humans in different ways and at different times. It thus names many prophets, beginning with the first man, Adam, and including both the prophets of the Jewish scriptures and Jesus. Moreover, it asserts that there are many other prophets that it does not name. As a result, no people can claim at the final judgment that God hasn't shown them God's nature and will. Yet the Qur'an also asserts that it is unique as its prophet Muhammad. For unlike other revelations, the Qur'an asserts that it is the original revelation, it is the complete revelation, and it is the last revelation. Muhammad is thus the final prophet for humankind. So unlike other prophets and revelations, Muhammad and the Qur'an are truly universal, intended for all humans. And this, according to the Qur'an, gives Muhammad a unique role in leading God's people to proclaim the message of the Qur'an. It is a universal message, and Muhammad isn't just teaching what God revealed for the Bedouins. He leads the followers of God into a mission to convert the world to Islam. That unique role required more of Muhammad and more of the Muslim community than simply preaching God's existence and judgment. Muhammad would have to become the leader of a large, powerful, multi-religious city that would eventually grow into an empire. So it isn't surprising that it is when he is at Medina that Muhammad receives revelations that give in detail what it means to be a Muslim in society. These later revelations define and shape something new and unique for the Bedouin people. A society built not on tribal affiliation, but on submission to God's law and obedience to God's will as revealed in God's prophet. This is truly revolutionary, from a society built on tribal loyalty to a society built on law. These verses also guide the Muslim community in its relationship with other communities. The Qur'an reveals that these relationships should not be formed on the basis of old tribal rivalries and alliances. They should be built on the basis of either having accepted or rejected God's revelation. The Qur'an therefore divides humanity into two parts: the people of the book, Christians, Jews, and others who have accepted one of God's prophets and one of God's revelations, and on the other hand, the people who continue to walk in ignorance of God. Ideally, the people of the book should naturally recognize the truth of the Qur'an, since it's the source of all revelation, according to Muslims, and thus their revelation. However, the Qur'an recognizes that this is not always the case. According to the Qur'an, this is because Christians and Jews have distorted and rebelled against God's revelation. Thus, the Qur'an expects conflict even as it idealizes the unity of Christians, Jews, and Muslims. The so-called verses of the sword are those in which the Qur'an most strongly asserts that if Jews and Christians rebel against Muhammad and the Qur'an, then they should be treated as enemies rather than family. But we should remember that these are only one set of verses coming from a time of particular conflict. But all of this sets the stage for a perpetual crisis created by the Qur'an. It not only places before individuals the demand of submission of God, it places that claim before whole societies as well. In Islam, personal crisis inevitably becomes political crisis, as Islam creates a missionary community under the leadership of Muhammad and his successors. It is not unlike the crisis created when Christianity became allied with the Roman state and the Rome's aspirations for world dominion. For more than 1,000 years, the Qur'an would be at the center of this dual crisis, this dual intervention of God into the personal and social lives of humans across the known world. And in the form of Islamic radicalism, that dual crisis remains not only a historical reality, but a goal today. Yet for most Muslims, like most Christians and Jews, the era of clashing empires is and should be over. The political framework of the modern nation state so long as these states grant Muslims religious freedom, provides for most Muslims the only necessary social context in which the Qur'an can continue to address humans with its demand to submit to God. Yet modern nations aren't merely a new framework in which the Qur'an can be read and recited. The modern world presents its own crisis, its own demands on humans that appear to compete with those of Revelation in general and the Qur'an specifically. And so Christians, Muslims in the modern world face a crisis of faith. They must determine whether modernity and its vast and fruitful insights into the natural and social worlds may not also be a new form of the old ignorance of God. We'll take up the problem of the Qur'an and science in the next video. Thank you.